Silence is good. Just because it's quiet in the room after you've approached a family, or just because they're just having a moment, you don't have to always talk. You don't have to always say something because an hour later you'll be approaching for donation. So sometimes those quiet moments are good. A family will share with you through action how they want to be supported. So if they're a touchy-feely family, like, oh, thank you so much, they'll give you a hug. Or you have your family where they just want to be alone. I had, I can name two different scenarios. I had one husband who lost his wife, and he about fell in my lap, just sobbing and things like that. And he was more of a, kind of touch his back sometimes, bring him some water and things like that. Then I had another man, one of the most challenging cases I had, but silence was good for us. And I literally would go in the room, leave his ginger ale and his water, walk out. 2 hours later, check back on him. I mean, this was a very long case, but he needed time. He was extremely devastated. Every once in a while, he would verbalize when he would feel my presence. So I'll knock on the door and say, it's just me. And he would say, my wife and my mom were the only two women I loved. This is so hard, breaking for me. And I said, all right, I'll check back. And then after like 20 hours, I was like, you really need to try to go to the bathroom. Here's some crackers. He didn't go to the bathroom. He didn't eat. He didn't do anything. But he knew that I would just check in. I would slide him something to drink. I would leave him some crackers. One time I opened a package and try to eat one. When I came back, a half of one was eaten. So he knew I was, there. So sometimes we can't overly do it. Then you have your families, you might only see them 2 or 3 times and don't really talk to them much. They'll show you, you don't have to sit up under a family or, do the most just to show them that you're there or that you care. You don't have to pretend. Everybody is different, and every family background is different. Some of them have a lot of support. Some of them have support, but they say, I just want to be by myself. So everyone grieves differently. So
the other piece of that is every family is different. So not only seeing different approachers, but the more approaches you go out and the more individuals, you very often you need to approach families in very different ways. They're in very different emotional states when you get to them.
Coming with a mind free of assumptions, free of prejudice, and knowing that we're going to talk to a human being that is is experiencing loss and is grieving, and just going there knowing that. That's all we need to know. And of course, if we need to know if there is suitability for donation, or depending on the case that we're looking at, sometimes we really just need to ask for timing, for evaluation, stuff like that. I think doing it in a way where we can really take our mind from all the stereotypes and the assumptions, we'll show respect to the family, meet the family where they are, and in the same level. I think that will be perceived. That's how you build rapport with families. That is something that sounds very obvious or very basic, but actually it's not. Especially when we have, I wouldn't even separate them, but I see them more when we have DCD cases. The families, it's not uncommon that the families go back and forth, changing the code status from DNR to full code, or we're going to withdraw now, we're not going to withdraw support, and they kind of go back and forth, and sometimes we come to the families in that decision-making process. So a nurse or a doctor will say, I think they're ready. I already told them this is a non-survival injury. They already know. And then you go to the room and the family's praying. So I think there are very obvious cues sometimes. And
so for instance, if a family member is tense and closed off, they've got their arms folded and they're sitting way back, that's not somebody that you want to reach out and touch necessarily right away. It's not somebody that you want to lean forward and really get in their face. Their body language is saying, I need to take a step back. I'm not quite ready to get totally into this conversation. But when the family, lets their arms go, lets themselves relax as they're telling themselves, because everybody likes to talk about themselves. That's just human nature. That oftentimes they'll start to lean forward and they'll start to really get into, telling you about their loved one or what happened. And that's part of really the debriefing that you do with families. It's not so much grief therapy, it's not so much counseling, it's not even so much as just coming in and asking a question about donation. It is really listening and being able to help families get to that point where the debriefing allows them to tell you of the incidents and what has happened, and what's transpired since the moment they got that call, or the moment they were there in that situation with their family members. And so then you can start to lean forward as they lean forward, and that sends the message that you're listening to, you're interested in what they're saying, you're not trying to plan the next thing to say, and then if they lean back, you slowly lean back too. If it's appropriate, sometimes there's a tender moment where you can reach out and you can touch them. You can either touch their arm or touch their leg, depending on where they're sitting. And there certainly has been times with family members where I set the stage for the room.
One thing that Joe did is he respected that that's what our wish at the time was, and he gave us the information we needed to know to consider our options without saying, well, I think you should do this one, or gee, if you don't do this, this will happen someplace else, or none of that was, not by Joe, was thrown out there.
And he was also very good about giving us time. He didn't make us feel like we had to rush to a decision. He left, he said, here's the information, let that sink in. I'm gonna, I'm gonna look into a few things, I'll come back.
And at some point, I don't know if Joe told us or someone else did, but it was made clear to us that Joe was available to us at any time we needed him. If we needed to have him paged, he could come to the hospital at any time. And he actually spent quite a bit of his time there at the hospital, behind the scenes, there when either he needed us or we needed him. Gave us a lot of time to either be together with ourselves or to be with our family, who are the majority of our family, and some friends were at the hospital there to support us as well. So we had a lot of that kind of time, and I think that was very, very helpful. Knowing when he needed to be there with us and knowing when he needed to step back. It came down to not what he said, but how he said it, the presentation, I think, and that knowing when to step back and allow us to discuss in private, to have our time as a family, whether just together ourselves or with our immediate family as well. It was during that time, not with Joe or any other of the medical staff present, that we were able to come to the decision to donate Jake's heart. And I think that giving that time really was a big key for that. We needed to talk to each other, and we needed to do that without anyone else present.